Hi, everyone. I'm Alethea Girding. I am the ISMTE treasurer, and I was the board liaison for the awards committee this year. And we're really excited to announce a great set of award winners, including Dave Allen, who is the winner of the Jason Roberts Founders Award for this year. Dave is the editorial director for Origin Editorial's client peer review program. Dave, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today and share a little bit about yourself. So welcome.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it and happy to be here.
Great. So I'll start with the question I've asked previously, because I find this really interesting for anyone in the industry. It's that so many of us come to scholarly publishing through different routes, and it's interesting to hear how we all found ourselves working in this field. So I'd like to start by asking you how you came to start working in scholarly publishing.
Well, I don't know if it's funny, but I had just graduated college with an editing degree, and I had no idea what I was going to do with English editing degree. And at the time, I was, looking at business and, and just trying to search for jobs. And then I found a job saying editorial assistant, and it was for a mid-sized society, the American Society for Bone and Mineral Research, and the job was editorial assistant for their Journal of Bone and Mineral Research, and it had editing or editorial in the title, and so I responded to that and got that job and worked for the society for 8 years. Started as editorial assistant and worked my way up to director of publications. And then from there moved on to a small cancer, commercial cancer publisher, the Cancer Information Group. So, I kind of just fell into it. I had no idea this industry even existed or what it was about. I think the industry as a whole does a bad job of marketing to potential employees, and I think a lot of people just discover it through job ads, and there's not really a great marketing outreach or even training for this type of industry or what it does. So that's how I kind of fell into it, and then I have over 2 decades later still here.
Well, that sounds somewhat familiar to me, and I think you're absolutely right about marketing the industry. I've represented ISMTE at career fairs and at writers fairs, and explaining to attendees what it is, what we do. The fact that so many of us, in fact, the majority of us, aren't scientists, always surprises people, and I think it's a great industry, and I guess we're a little secret that doesn't need to be a secret. I think more people would really love to be a part of this if they knew about it.
No, I agree. I think it would be a godsend for English or communications majors who really are struggling to figure out what to do with their degree.
Yeah, I mean, I think some people are like afraid, when I tell them what I do, they think, oh, you must know a lot about, whatever current journal I'm working in at the time. And I say, I know that some of the terms, but that's not what you need to know. So, well, so I want to talk a little bit about the award. The Jason Roberts Founders Award recognizes individuals who have, among other things, made extraordinary steps toward defining the future of peer review and editorial office management and development, for instance, by leading industry change initiatives. And one thing that stood out to the awards committee when we were reviewing these applications was your work leading efforts to establish an innovative model of concierge services for peer-reviewed content. And so I'd like for you, because that's really what stood out to us, I'd like for you to explain a little bit more about the project and what you hope that it will provide our industry.
Well, certainly. So I think it might be good to do a little bit of background. When I started in publishing, we started out as a paper submission process. So, it would come via mail. I would have a stamp. I would stamp that manuscript number on there, and I would figure out a folder and fax papers to editors and fax peer review requests. And luckily enough, ASBMR, or my boss at the journal, JBMR, was friends with the owner and operator of Aries Systems, and she twisted Linden's arm to develop editorial manager, and so we were heavily involved in the testing at an editorial office level of editorial manager. And so my career was quickly defined by, very much systems and technology of peer review. And so I was given the task of, operating EM at the office. And so that was kind of career defining for me. And, over the years, I think technology has done a great thing of kind of speeding the peer review process along, giving us tools that like really help elevate our work. So it does what we would consider back in the grunt work for us so that we can open up opportunities to do other things, to have the time to work on more meaningful projects. And so that has been great. The downside, I think, in many ways, and this is what we found with when we first started using EM, is that authors and editors and reviewers have a very much more clinical or robotic style approach to peer review. Their interaction is largely with the computer. They get their invites, they do their work. EM was almost a disaster when it first launched, just because it didn't really consider how an editor does their job. And I think I remember when it first launched, the editors had a to-do list where they could not do anything. It just showed them what they had to do. There was no actions that they could take. They had to go elsewhere to try to do things. And so as a whole, those groups tend to have fallen off the radar. And then the industry has also moved to speed from publishing. So get that paper in, get it peer reviewed, get it out as fast as possible. And, we have put in places, systems and procedures to help speed that process along. But largely, the human aspect has been lost in peer review, or at least in our part of the peer review process. And so for me, the concierge style is in some ways getting back to an earlier model of working with authors directly, working with peer reviewers directly, working with editors directly, stepping in and assisting them and facilitating their needs as part of the process. And part of that is another technology leap, in my opinion, to give additional tools to do that. And so as part of this project that I'm working on right now for a fairly large client is basically making the promise that systems like EM did 20 years ago into reality. And I think, again, as part of background, systems like Editorial Manager very much took our paper process and made it electronic. It didn't do anything fancy with that. It took how we were doing the paper process, made it very much into an e-form. It gave us additional tools, which were great, but it didn't innovate beyond that approach. And so I think we're on the cusp of a new generation or new innovation in peer review that takes the promise of the online world, takes the promise of technology, and says, let's transform peer review. Let's finally, break those chains, transform the model, and give additional tools to our stakeholders so that they can perform peer review. And so part of that is looking at upstream processes, working more closely with the authors at, their level at the paper creation stage. So giving them technological tools for writing their paper in a collaborative way, giving them the opportunity, having things like integrated conflict of interest. Convey is a big example of that. But instead of putting it at the editorial office level, put it at the author level. When they're building their paper, have them do their conflicts of interests at that stage, so that it's not the editorial office as soon as the paper is submitted, that email goes out, or you're having to track down the conflicts of interest, have it ready before it gets to us. Having templates for the authors. So if they want to write a manuscript, they're writing in the template of the journal. So no more having to check or quality control. Do they have their top statement in their methods section? When they're writing their paper, it's going to be ask them to make sure that it's there. And it's going to facilitate faster peer review, but at the same time helping the authors. So very much a look at a technical approach there. Then moving into peer review, also transformative. Looking at peer reviewing within the system. So no more separate Word file, no more separate box. They open up a peer review file, they start peer reviewing, they comment directly on the topic while they're writing. All of those comments are collated. So for one example that I give is, if you have 3 peer reviewers and they all made comments on the abstract, all of it's collated right there for you. So as an author, all your comments are together. You no longer have to go to reviewer 1, respond to that, reviewer 2, respond to that. All of the comments are together. So they can respond section by section instead of having to look at line numbers and look at individual comments. And then going even further, that the editors can review that way, make their own comments, and even specify what comments are the most important to answer. And then it goes back to the authors, and they revise their paper directly in the system. So they don't have to go outside. They can respond in the system. They can respond comment by comment, make the changes in the portal, and then more importantly for editorial professionals, they can't submit until they've addressed everything. So no more separate documents where you're having to look, hey, did they respond? I'm going to read this document, and then I'm going to read the paper, and I'm going to see a point-by-point response. The point-by-point response is their actual revision, where they have responded with real-time changes or responding to comments that are directly in the document. And then moving on to, once it's accepted, going directly into a production environment, where everything is fully executed, templates already there, and it's just a matter of copy editing. So it's very much looking at ways of speeding the process, but also making it user-centric. So making it easier on all of our stakeholders, and then allowing editorial professionals to, instead of having, again, to do some of that grunt work, removing even more of that work, allowing us to get even more service-oriented, going directly to authors, working with them on making sure that everything is running smoothly, working directly with reviewers, working directly with editors, and really being able to spend our time in a more meaningful way, instead of having to chase down forms or making sure that point A is there, or making sure that all of these items are there. Let technology make sure that's there, free us up to work on the human part of peer review.
Yeah, that all sounds so fascinating to me. And I'd love to have it now. It all sounded great. And what really stood out to me was making peer review easier, because of all of the stakeholders in this chain, they're the ones that are doing this completely volunteer. They may get to put it in their publons or whatever, but they're not putting it on their CV, and they're not getting paid to do it like we are. They're not getting the prestige of doing it like the editors are. Like, they're the ones that we're asking to do this completely volunteer, and anything we can do to make life easier for them is just, it really stands out. And what you propose just makes such sense that it's hard to believe that that's not already how we're doing it. I also noted in your nomination that you've been a volunteer for ISMTE before, and I'd be interested to know what advice you have for any member who is maybe new or isn't really sure if they want to commit to a volunteer role, and if you have any advice for somebody who's considering that.
Uh, I do have some advice, and I waited till later in my career to really get involved and to do more volunteer. And in many respects, it was because I was worried. One, did I know enough to participate? And I wanted to be more settled into the process. But to be honest with you, it is incredibly important, even at early stage career, to get involved. And I know that time is always a consideration for anyone, but the ability to network with other professionals, the ability to get recognized, and just the ability to really work on projects that will make a difference to our personal community is incredibly important. Um, and it's always a rewarding experience. It's always, great to, work with people that are doing your job, that know the struggles in your community. They can even help in many respects. And so it provides a kind of a pool of resources. It's not just working on a committee, but it also gives you people that you can do outreach to, just on a personal professional level. And that's just invaluable, especially when the majority of editorial professionals might be in small offices. Maybe they're on their own, maybe they only have one or two other people. And so being able to have that wider community and have that experience is important. It helps you grow your career, and it allows you to grow your opportunities within the profession as well.
Yeah, 100% agreed. If anybody is thinking of volunteering, I completely second what Dave said. The number of times I've struggled with a problem for a while and then all of a sudden realized, wait, I can ask someone I've worked with on an ISMTE committee. I bet they've dealt with it, and I've come back and gotten an answer in, a couple of hours that I've been mulling over for weeks. I like it's great to contribute, but I promise you'll get as much back from volunteering and meeting new people as you give to the society.
Mhm.
So one last question for you, Dave. What is your favorite thing about working in scholarly publishing?
Well, I mean, for me, I work on the medical side, and that's kind of where I fell into it, and that's where I've stayed. And so for me, I get a great sense of kind of accomplishment for knowing that the papers that are going through peer review, one, are being peer reviewed, and items are being detected, and we're improving those papers. But two, because they make meaningful difference in patient lives. These papers go out, they're contributing to new treatments, and very much it's life saving, life altering for this data going out. So for me, that's always been a big benefit. But I'd say that that would apply to just any aspect of scholar publishing for me. If I was on the tech side, working in say the space program, just being able to have things that advance science in general is incredibly important to me, and I get a lot of kind of joy out of that aspect. Being able to kind of help authors and editors and reviewers get this information reviewed and then published has just been affirming for me.
So we're sort of back where we started, which is, to be a part of this community, you don't need to be a scientist. In fact, the vast majority of us aren't. But if you value science and you value what it brings to our world, but you don't have a science background, like this is the place for you. I think Dave, you really summed it up quite nicely. So I just want to thank you again for taking the time to do this interview this morning. And again, congratulations on being the 2022 recipient of the Jason Roberts Founders Award. We really appreciate all you've done for our industry and for our society. And congratulations to you.
All right. Well, thank you. It's been a great honor, and I appreciate it. And please feel free to reach out to me, or if others want to reach out to me, I'm always happy to help.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.